Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we're going to go through which gaming laptops are the best you can get right now. It has been a couple of months since Nvidia launched their RTX line of discrete GPUs for laptops. Prices have settled a little bit, the market is in a clearer position, so really there's no better time to make some recommendations. I'll be going through 5 categories in this video discussing the best options plus a few other alternatives. The categories are a mixture of price points and use cases, so I think it should cover most of what people will be interested in getting. And yeah, well, let's get right into it. First up, we have my personal favorite category, portable, slim and light gaming laptops. I think this is what really sells the concept of a gaming laptop. You should be able to take it around with you without needing to lug around 3 to 4 kilograms. It should be slim and easy to carry and have decent enough battery life that it's genuinely usable off the charger. Of course, it also needs powerful hardware for gaming. The best option right now is the MSI GS65 Stealth at 15.6 inches in size, or alternatively, the GS75 Stealth if you'd rather the 17-inch variant. I've tested most of the slim and light offerings in this new RTX generation, and MSI's Stealth line is simply the best. The reason for this is it delivers the full performance of the components inside without throttling, while doing so at respectable fan noise levels. On top of this, it's the lightest of the main portable gaming options, giving it another edge on its competitors. The Alienware M15, for example, is noticeably heavier and larger while also having cooler problems. The Gigabyte Aero 15X9 is a decent offering, but its loud, cooler and inferior design sees it fall behind the MSI option. And the Asus Zephyrus, while decent in a number of areas, has an awkward design with its side position trackpad. Aside from beating its competitors, the MSI GS65 Stealth packs decent hardware, headlined by a 1080p 144Hz display, Intel Core i7-8750H CPU, and 16GB of RAM. The default 256GB SSD option is a little on the small side, but it can be upgraded relatively easily, while battery life is also pretty good. There are a number of GS65 and GS75 variants out there, including older Pascal GTX models and newer Turing RTX models. The best option right now is the RTX 2060 model. It's normally priced at $2,100 US, but it can occasionally be found for below $2,000, making it around the same price as the older GTX 1070 Max-Q variant. The RTX 2060 is about 8% faster on average than the GTX 1070 Max-Q, making it the better value choice. The higher tier options with the RTX 2070 Max-Q and RTX 2080 Max-Q are priced at $2,400 and $2,800 respectively, but performance gains of 15% or less really aren't enough to justify that price hike. Of course, if you want more power, these models are available, but today the RTX 2060 is the sweet spot. It feels like every time I go to update my gaming laptop recommendations, the Acer Predator Helios 300 always comes out on top in the budget category. This laptop is still priced at around $1,000 for the GTX 1060 6GB model, making it still the best value gaming laptop on the market. So let's go through why this remains the case. If you want something with a GTX 1060 6GB inside, around that $1,000 mark is about as cheap as it gets. But Acer hasn't compromised much to hit that price point. You're still getting a full Intel Core i7-8750H processor, unlike a quad-core Core i5 model in some other budget offerings. You're still getting a 1080p 144Hz display with 16GB of RAM and 256GB of storage. Really nothing there is cut back from the norm. What you're not getting with the Helios 300 compared to higher tier models is mostly in the design. This isn't a massive system, but it's not overly slim. There's no crazy RGB keyboard effects, no premium materials, no slim bezels, and the battery life is nothing special. But Acer has made those sacrifices to deck the system out with the best hardware, and that's why it remains the best entry-level gaming option. There are some other models that do get pretty close, the Asus TUF FX504 being one. It's not quite as good as the Acer laptop and around $100 more expensive right now, but if you're checking prices in the future and the FX504 ends up in a good spot, it's one I would consider. For those after a 17-inch model, the Acer Aspire 17 is one to check out. However, there is one direction I wouldn't go in, and that's to buy anything below a GTX 1060 6GB. This GPU really is the sweet spot. If you opt for something like the GTX 1050 Ti, yeah, you might end up saving $250 or so, but the 1060 is easily more than 50% faster, so that's not a good value proposition. And as you go lower in price, laptop makers tend to strip back features like storage, RAM, and the CPU, so overall you end up with a much lower quality product. Save your cash, and drop $1,000 on the Helios 300 and you'll be much happier with your purchase. While this category is called Best Bang for Buck, there's more of a focus on the bang than the buck here because we already have a budget category that offers excellent value. Instead, this category is for those that want a bit of a step up in performance over the GTX 1060 6GB, but still want something good value that won't break the bank. When you step up a tier, there are several options on the market right now. We have the older GTX 1070 and the newer RTX 2060 and RTX 2070. However, when you look at general laptop pricing and compare that to the performance you're getting, it really doesn't make sense to buy a new Turing RTX laptop right now. GTX 1070 laptops at $1,500 are cheaper than RTX 2060 laptops that start around $1,700 for similar configurations. However, the GTX 1070 is actually faster, sometimes upwards of 10% faster, so it's really not worth buying an RTX 2060 laptop. The RTX 2070 for laptops does pull around 15% ahead of the GTX 1070, but typically costs between 20 and 30% more, so again, it doesn't have that bang for buck factor. With all this considered, right now the GTX 1070 offers the best value for upper mid-range laptop gamers, and the one laptop that stands out to me in particular is the Asus ROG Strix Scar 2 GL504GS. The name is a bit of a mouthful, but you're getting a really excellent laptop at $1,500 right now. Slim bezels around the 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz display, a full non-Max-Q GTX 1070, a 512GB SSD, 16GB of RAM, and of course, the Core i7-8750H. The chassis is your standard mid-tier body, but I think it's really appropriate for this sort of machine, and its cooler allows the GTX 1070 to run at its expected performance. When I reviewed this laptop last year, the major sticking point for me was the price, but it's come down significantly since then to become a great value option. Those that want the next step up in performance will probably have to go for the RTX 2070 models at around $1,800 to $2,000, which isn't completely outrageous as these systems are faster, but the GTX 1070 is where the sweet spot currently is, offering a similar price to performance ratio as GTX 1060 laptops. The extreme laptop category isn't a category I normally like to recommend in because I feel if you're after one of these enormous chunky beasts with high-end hardware inside, you're probably better off building a small form factor desktop PC, which will be cheaper and faster. But you might have a use case where you really want a top-end gaming laptop, in which case I'll recommend the Asus ROG G703GX. This is a big, heavy 17-inch laptop. It's a huge 51mm thick and 4.7 kilograms heavy, but it packs a full RTX 2080 for laptops inside, and thanks to the enormous cooler, throttling isn't a big deal. Aside from that, you're looking at a Core i7-8750H, 17.3-inch 1080p 144Hz display, 512GB SSD plus 1TB SSHD, and 16GB of RAM. At $3,000, I feel this is probably the best value option of the RTX 2080 systems, with good enough cooling to actually unleash that GPU. Now, of course, you can go bigger and faster than this, but really the value drops away quite significantly. Even just adding the Core i9-8950HK into the mix, a slightly faster, although unlocked version of the 8750H, will cost you around $800. And then you can go up to stuff like desktop CPUs and multi-GPU configurations, which again really aren't worth the exorbitant price you'll be paying. If you have, say, $5,000 to spend or more, a better option would be grabbing something like the MSI GS65 to use on the go for around $2,000, while dropping $3,000 on a decked-out gaming PC to use at your desk. That would be more than enough cash to get a decent RTX 2080 Ti gaming rig, which would be faster than anything currently available in a laptop form factor. So the Asus ROG G703GX is really the top end of what I think is reasonable for a gaming laptop. The final category here is for those that want to buy an ultra portable system, say in the standard 13-inch size category, but might want to do a bit of light gaming on the go. What is the absolute fastest system you can get in that sort of form factor? Well, it might surprise you how few gaming capable systems there are with 13-inch displays. At one point, this was sort of an emerging gaming laptop category, but that quickly evaporated in favor of 15-inch portable gaming laptops. So these days what we're left with are plenty of systems with no discrete GPU, a growing number with NVIDIA's okay but not amazing MX150 and MX250 GPU offerings. The MX150 is good for games that aren't very intensive like Overwatch, Fortnite and CSGO, but what if you want something with a bit more oomph? Well, there's really only one option, and that's the Microsoft Surface Book 2 in its 13-inch variant. This is, as far as I can tell, the only laptop on the market of this size to pack a proper GTX 1050 in its chassis. The GTX 1050 is definitely still an entry-level discrete GPU, but it's easily more than 50% faster than an MX150, which opens up more gaming options at medium and low settings. Unfortunately, the privilege of having a GTX 1050 in a 13-inch system comes at a huge price. Kitting out a Surface Book 2 with the required hardware to get this GPU will set you back $2,000, but you'll probably want more than 8GB of RAM and a 256GB SSD, in which case you're looking at more like $2,500. That's more than most portable 15-inch gaming laptops for a much lower level of performance, so you'll really have to want the Surface Book 2's excellent portability to justify getting it over a system that's truly designed for gaming. With that said, the Surface Book 2 does have a lot of advantages like the detachable tablet section, full stylus support and a high resolution display, which you don't get with most true gaming laptops. So it's just a balance of what you might want and how much gaming you should factor into your buying decision. That's it for this selection of gaming laptop recommendations. I'm sure there will be plenty of you that will disagree with the devices I've chosen, so enjoy arguing about that in the comments. Consider subscribing for more laptop reviews and other content. We also have a Patreon page if you feel like supporting us directly. I'll catch you in the next one.